Good. All right, perfect. All right, so let's get started here. We have an all-star panel of executives that will help you adapt your job search skills to the new business climate. So in this fast-paced and engaging discussion today, we are going to review motivational tips and techniques for students and new grads, how to make your resume as competitive as possible, interview preparation, what to expect when starting a new position, and top hiring industries in the Pittsburgh region. All right, so who is our all-star panel? Well, I am here today, Liz Lamping, the PHRA's Executive Director. We also have Jen Kelly, who is the PHRA College Lead. Jen is really the leading force in the creation of today's program. We also have Catherine Miller, who is PHRA's Membership Development Specialist. Catherine has a very strong passion for empowering others to grow and develop to their full potential. We also have Patrick Gilchrist. Patrick is from Robert Half. Patrick has been in the staffing and recruiting industry since 2004 and has been actively involved with the PHRA basically from 2010. He did relocate to South Carolina for a while, but he is back and returned to Pittsburgh and is back involved with the PHRA. We also have Diane Hauser. Diane is an employee relations manager at Connective RX. She is a member of their COVID and re-entry team, handling issues related to COVID-19 planning and how to bring employees back to work. We also have Amy Lynn Kyler. Amy Lynn has over 20 years of recruiting experience, leading, managing, and executing the recruiting functions at companies such as Deloitte, KPMG, Dick's Sporting Goods, and Amy Lynn has a level of knowledge, commitment, and professionalism that is second to none, and is setting the operational standard in the recruitment and consulting industry. We also have Luann Chalk with Chesapeake HR Consulting. Luann is the principal of Chesapeake HR Consulting and specializes in leadership strategy in all areas of talent development. And last but not least, we have Alyssa Pampina, who is a pending college graduate from the University of Dayton. She is excellent with social media and will have some great tips and motivational techniques for students and new grads. All right, so at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Alyssa Pampina and Jen Kelly to start with the motivational tips and techniques for students and new graduates. Welcome, Alyssa and Jen.
First, I'd like to thank everyone on the panel for volunteering your time today. And Alyssa, I would like to kind of introduce Alyssa a little more. I asked her to join our panel because she's been through a lot of different challenges throughout her educational journey. And she's actually managed to obtain internships throughout the pandemic, paid positions throughout the pandemic, and has managed to finish her schooling in 3 years, and has landed some opportunities upon graduation that she's considering in December. So that's very exciting. And I think that that'll really add value and to help you guys to, launch that career and to take some of these tips. And I think it'll really help you to motivate you and to overcome any obstacles that you may have in your way. I've had many years of being a director of career development and human resource experience, and I'm really here to add value to try to help you to launch that career. So Alyssa, without further ado.
So hi everyone, as Jen said, my name is Alyssa. I was Pittsburgh born and raised, and I graduated from Oakland Catholic High School in 2018. Following graduation, I moved out to Ohio, where I currently attend the University of Dayton, and I will be graduating in December with a degree in public relations and a double minor in marketing and Italian. So moving forward, some of the topics that we're going to talk about today that I find vital within my job search and my career services experiences have been social media presence, overcoming various obstacles. And after those two topics, I will go into how I obtained my internships, paid positions, and how I believe that securing a job post-grad would be effective. First and foremost, your social media presence. Now, as a college student, I'm on the same page as many of you just due to the fact that we were all raised in this kind of technology era, and we have gone through so many of the turning points of the world within our life. So, first and foremost, your personal sites are going to be some of the ones that you see here more so: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, which all of those things can be used from a business perspective as well. However, I'm going to put the emphasis on the fact that for us, it's important to use those as personal connections only, staying updated on lives of our friends and families, as well as for entertainment purposes and just for fun. However, when you're looking for a professional position, your social media presence should take place on more platforms that are geared towards helping you find that position or adding people to your network in order to put you ahead within the job field. So, my personal favorite as far as that goes is LinkedIn. However, there are a number of other sites that seem to be less popular that allow you to do that. And, these are also great tools to use if you are looking for free resources to kind of push you forward within your career. So as far as overcoming obstacles goes, I know Jen kind of gave a little bit of an overview that I have undergone various struggles within my educational experience. And it all kind of started with the pandemic, which this is obviously what we're here to discuss. So my aspiration for multiple years had been to study abroad in Italy, and I eventually hope to be there long term. However, I was there in the spring of 2020 when the pandemic hit. The first case hit Italy on January 27th. I'd just arrived January 24th, 3 days prior to that. And things were kind of interesting there for the time that I was there. I was there for about 3 weeks while things were considered to be normal. And once that fourth week hit, it was kind of chaotic just because the school was trying to figure out what was going to be best for us and what we were going to do. And they are not as technologically sound there just because it's not their natural state. They are more of a face to face, country when it comes to communication. So I was sent home a little over 4 weeks into my trip. And it was really interesting because over the span of those 4.5 weeks, I was able to pack so much into that time, but I was also disappointed because when I got back here, it had seemed almost completely normal. So I was just like, okay, well, this really affected me and I'm trying to figure out where to go next. So, for the school, it took them about 10 days to get us online, which was right around the time all of the schools here got sent home. So once that happened, we were trying to work in different time zones to communicate and get our assignments done and things like that. And I was just trying to figure out where the path was going to lead next because, as I said, I had various opportunities while in Italy to continue my time there. And, being back here in the midst of all of this, companies were kind of up in the air as to where it was going to lead for them as well, with various internships, job opportunities, and just schooling. So last summer, I had the opportunity to work for my father. We own a family run business, and it was not necessarily in the realm of my experiences. However, I gained a lot of experiences from it. So, as opposed to kind of harping on that time, I tried to find a solution to better myself, which at that time, that was the opportunity that presented itself, in addition to the fact that I took classes online because many schools, Dayton being one of them, offered our courses at a discounted rate. So if you have the opportunity to do something like that and you can manage everything at once, I highly recommend doing that because I do believe that I have found great success in taking that route. So as far as internships goes, I have obtained 2 internships within my time here, which at 20 years old, I think is something that most people are able to do. However, during the times we're in, it's definitely not as easy to come by unless you put the effort in to do so. So, as far as they go, I want you to be really aware of the search engines that you have available to you. First, I have listed Handshake. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Handshake, but it is a job searching platform used by multiple colleges and universities for not only on campus positions, but also off campus positions. And they are a more student driven site, which is why I have them listed here for internships specifically. Aside from that, I haven't personally used Indeed, but I have a lot of friends that have obtained positions through Indeed, which is more geared towards finding that job instead of kind of presenting yourself on a platform, which is a little bit different from LinkedIn, which is kind of both sides of things. So I use LinkedIn day in and day out. It's a great way to learn how to market yourself and your experiences, but also to connect with people that push you further within the search. So, resources you have available to you to help build these platforms and build your presence within them would be your network. So, once you're on LinkedIn, you want to find people that have similar interests. You can like different companies that you think are good fits for you and, kind of just build yourself up because you never know where your connections are going to lead. I can tell you that before today, I haven't met many of the people on this panel. However, I have connected with them since then, and I look forward to working with them in the future, whether it be over LinkedIn, staying updated on one another, or potentially reaching out if we have different roles that are fitting, or even just, being connected from a professional standpoint. So at your universities, another resource, excuse me, that is available to you would be career services. I have worked with career services 3 times a semester since I started here, all the way from them helping me write my first resumes and cover letters till now that I am actually working with them as a peer advisor and guest speaker because I've gained so much knowledge from continuously staying on top of what I have been able to produce as a result of their help. So please use those resources. I don't think career services is marketed enough at various institutions across the United States. And, if you haven't yet, reach out and find those people to help you. Another resource, which you're all informed of, is the PHRA. We're here today. And, you're able to find them on those sites that I have mentioned above. So go ahead and do that, as well as use your other resources that are free to you. I can't stress enough how many of the skill sets that I didn't necessarily have before that I have now because I got on Google and I said, how do you do this? Or XYZ for beginners. Whatever it may be, educate yourself because there are free resources out there. Even on other social media sites, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, I have found several people just by searching what's the best way to respond to a job offer or what's the best way to write a cover letter. And I have learned so much just from various experts that I've found online because they're free resources to me. So, moving forward as to how you can obtain a paid position, a lot of the information is going to be reiterated from what I just previously stated. However, as you move up in the ranks, you're going to want to use your resources in different ways. In doing so, you're going to want to update your experiences, talk about different jobs you've obtained, talk about volunteer experiences, clubs, other roles, and things that have been helpful to you, as well as learning how to market those experiences. As I said, I frequent LinkedIn. When I get on LinkedIn, I am very much about, hey, because I took this course, I was able to connect with these people and it provided me with this result. And by doing those things, people notice those things. I personally was just like, oh, LinkedIn's just another, site. And I wasn't quite sure about how to talk about myself and my accomplishments in a humble way. But through the help of career services and professors and various people within my network, I have been able to learn how to do that, which have greatly assisted me in finding paid positions. So, my most recent upcoming role is going to be with a large corporate company in Pittsburgh. And one of the first things they said to me during my interviews were, we didn't realize how many certifications you've been able to obtain within the past amount of weeks. Those are all free resources available to you online. You just have to learn to put them out there so that people are able to find you based on your skill sets. So don't underestimate your ability to kind of obtain those resources and discuss them publicly. And lastly, securing a job post grad. So again, you're going to want to do all of those things that you did before. However, you are going to have further resources from either previous positions that you were in, as well as fellow alumni. You might not be best friends with everybody you meet on campus. That's not normal, and everybody's totally aware of that. However, if there's somebody you took a class with years ago and they're working at a company you're interested in, don't be afraid to reach out to those people. Your network is going to push you further than you think. So start that network now, because in 5 years from now, you don't know where your path is going to lead, and vice versa. You don't know who you're going to be able to help. So continue updating updating your experiences, continue using your resources, and you will be able to secure multiple positions post grad as opposed to just one. Just make sure you're putting yourself out there and putting that work in.
Alyssa, you did a fantastic job. And I wanted to add your network also extends to your family and friends too. So don't be afraid to reach out to those individuals as well. And thank you very much for taking the time today. And we really appreciate your insight, and you've done wonderful things for your early career and your internships and some of your paid experiences. And Alyssa's going to be off to work soon too. So she has a job while in school as well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you guys for having me.
Alyssa, I know that you have to leave the discussion earlier. As Jen mentioned, you have to get to work. Is there anybody on the call? She will not be able to participate in the Q&A. So if there's anybody that has any questions that they would like to ask Alyssa, if you wanted to go ahead and do that now for a minute, we could pause here for questions. Either you could put them in the chat or if you wanted to just unmute and speak. And any questions for Alyssa? Well, and go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Cassidy. Sorry about that.
Fine. I was going to ask, like, what tips you have for interviewing, like the online experience.
Sure. So as far as interviews go, one resource that I have found extremely vital in my interview process has been using Glassdoor. So if there's a company you're interested in, I would go directly to Glassdoor and search that company, because oftentimes they will have on their interview questions that are typically asked. Otherwise, feel free to go on YouTube. There are various videos that I've found that are top 15 basic interview questions or best ways to nail an interview. And I know those things sound kind of elementary, but they were super helpful within my process. So by just looking at job descriptions and matching up the skills that they are looking for to those questions and making sure that you have answers that tie back to those things is super important, because you never know where they're going to lead if you correctly connect your skill sets to what they're looking for. So I would definitely just make sure you're covering all bases by, using your resources as well as looking for the description and making sure that you really do your research on those companies.
Thank you.
I want to jump in here for just a second. Alyssa made a great point about the looking at the company, and she mentioned the job description. I want to say, don't be afraid to apply for a position that you may not have everything in the job description. Job descriptions are a wish list. Sometimes what you bring to the table through your experiences, like Alyssa was mentioning, getting over there into Italy and suddenly be in the middle of a lockdown. Well, I'm telling you, as an employer, I know she's got survival skills. I know she's had to think outside of the box. Her creativity got used, problem solving, all things I'm looking for to hire. So maybe she doesn't have, 5 years of experience here, but she's already demonstrated something that she can still speak to in an interview. So don't hold yourself back. Apply to something. If you've got a good, I'd say 50, 60% of what's on that job description, send your resume. Trust that the recruiter will know the questions to ask you to see if you have the skill or the potential to build that skill. So don't be afraid. Don't hold back.
Absolutely. Like Diane was saying, just use the things that you have to make your experiences. I have to tell you, the most recent role I applied for a couple of social media roles because that's where my expertise falls when it comes to marketing and sales. They looked at my resume, pulled it, and when I got to that interview, they said, actually, after looking at your skill sets, we believe that you would benefit more and be of more value to us in the e-commerce department. I have very limited knowledge when it comes to e-commerce. However, at least I thought I did. After going to that interview and discussing the skill sets that I've built within social media, they have reassured me that a lot of those skills align and that they believe I would be a good candidate. So don't underestimate your own powers either, because, whether you believe that it's 5 years of work experience, the simple thoughts that go through our head, even academic experience is going to count in a lot of positions. So shoot your shot. The worst that you can get is a no.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Alyssa, and enjoy the rest of your day when you do have to head out. We appreciate you joining us today and sharing all of your great tips and tricks there.
Thank
All
you.
right. So we're moving on now to Amy Lynn. You are up. Can you please provide us some tips on how we can make our resumes as competitive as possible?
Absolutely. I appreciate everyone joining today, and I'm looking forward to being with you. So Liz was kind enough to pull up a resume that is a sample of a new grad type of resume. As a recruiter, I have done a lot of research on eye movement when people are reading resumes, and sitting along with hiring managers and HR managers as they review resumes. I will tell you that, wrongly or rightly, there is a bit of a 10-second scan, right? So the adage of you get one chance to make a first impression, this is partly it. This, and I'd say your LinkedIn profile. So you want to make sure that what jumps off the page on your resume are the qualifiers for the job that you're interested in. We just heard Diane say, you know, even if you don't have 100% of the qualifications that are on the job description, go ahead and apply. I agree with that. And I think that your resume needs to align with a lot of those qualifiers. So if you look at 3 job descriptions that are of interest to you, I would maybe look down at what are the required skills or the qualifications for those jobs, and pull out those important things and make sure that they're at the top of your resume. So you'll see on the resume that we have pulled up here, we have the candidate's name, and then under his name, we have the hyperlink to his LinkedIn profile, which Alyssa called out is so important and so beneficial. You also want to make sure that your email address on the right-hand side is one that is not, that's politically correct, let's say, right? So you don't want to have bigbob@gmail.com or something like that. You want it to be a professional. It might be your EDU email address or something like that, but you want it to be professional. Sometimes people will put more than one email address. They'll put their home email address and their school email address. I would advise you just to put the one that you check all of the time, because if you have 2, it gets confusing for the reader as to which one they should use. A branding statement is really important. So I think we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, what do you want to do? When you think about your resume, this is your ticket to entry. So in many cases, people that are later in career will use the resume to list everything that they've ever done. But in fact, I think what you want to do is you want to list the things that you've done that you want to do more of. So this is sort of your very quick branding statement. As you'll see in Kevin's, he's involved with statistical analysis, and just one real quick sentence about who he is and what he does. And then in the highlights of expertise, these 3 columns of 3, as you can see, are real easy to see and to read, and they sort of jump off the page at you. And it's, I always say, when put your resume in front of you, close your eyes and open them and ask yourself, what's the very first thing that you see? That first thing that you see should be a qualifier. So again, when you go back to those job descriptions and you look at what are the qualifications or the required skills, usually at the bottom of the job description, those are the kinds of words that you want to have in this highlights of expertise. Now, as a new grad, generally your education is closer to the top of your resume. As you get professional experience, you'll want to move that to the bottom of your resume because it's indicative of where you are in your career. So as a recruiter, when I see a resume, if education is at the bottom, I generally think that person's been out of school for a little while. If it's at the top, they're generally a new grad. So you want to, as new grads, you'll want to go ahead and keep that at the top. Again, this is just what you did and where you did it. And keep that order in mind because I think it's really important. The degree that you got is more important than the college that you got it at, although the college is very important. I think putting the degree first and where you got it second is important. Then as you move down, you'll see your career summary. Now, I know you don't have a lot of this yet, but this is where it's really important if you're earlier in your academic career to get internships, to participate in groups where maybe you have a board role or, you know, a treasury role or a leadership role of some sort. Because as Jennifer mentioned earlier, or someone mentioned earlier, all of those things that show your ability to get through adversity or lead a team or something like that. Those are all things that we as recruiters look for. So again, you'll see on Kevin's career summary, it's a list of what he did and then where he did it. The dates are very clearly to the right-hand side. So they sort of pop off the page and it's easy for my eye to see them versus looking for them. White space is good on a resume. So you don't want to have too much information. You want to have just enough information. Under each job that Kevin held or internship that he held, you'll see that he has some bullets. And generally those bullets tie back to the highlights of expertise. So for example, if he says process improvement is one of his areas of expertise, somewhere in the career summary, he should have a bullet that talks about how he improved a process in one of the jobs that he held. So it's validating those things that are in the highlights of expertise. A lot of people ask, well, what if I had a job that was unrelated to my major or unrelated to what I want to do? I would still say at this point in your career, I would list that because I do think that it does show that you were showing up for work, that you consistently were able to hold a job. And I would really be thoughtful about what are some of the things that you were called upon to do that job that could be somewhat related to what you're looking to do. Although you might think because you were a waitress, you really didn't have anything to do with that new job in HR, when in reality, you were managing customers' expectations. You were really, understanding what their orders were, or making sure that you got their orders right. Those are all things that you would have in your career, as well as understanding the voice of the employee. Things like that really will tie back that maybe you're not recognizing. I would ask you to be really thoughtful about. If you were involved in groups or organizations, again, if you held a leadership role, I do think that it's okay to list that as part of your career summary or your work history, you may call it at this point in your career. But then any organizations that you were a part of, I would list at the bottom as well, especially if you had a leadership role. But even if you didn't hold a leadership role, if you played soccer, the fact that you were able to be a part of a team is really important. So I think you really want to make sure that you're running your resume by some professional folks, like the folks that are on the panel for this session, just to get their feedback in what their eye sees as a recruiter or as an HR leader. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you have about writing your resume.
Lynn, I did have one that came through. So can you comment on columns? Someone was told that columns may not work with computerized applicant tracking systems.
Great question. So anytime that you apply to something online, your resume goes into a tool called an ATS, or an applicant tracking system. Basically, that ATS just reads your text like ASCII characters, and sometimes what comes across on the other end is very garbled. So a lot of people right now are putting a lot of blowout boxes, fancy graphics, a lot of columns that might be like a lot more text on the left-hand side. And, maybe they're putting their academic experience or classes that they took on the left, and then on the right, they're almost splitting their resume in two columns. Those types of columns do not get through an applicant tracking system well. These types of columns that we have in the highlights of expertise will go through an applicant tracking system and still come across on the other side. So again, I think plain is better. Error on the side of caution here. Anytime you start getting really fancy fonts or different boxes or grayed or black, or, I realize there's some light gray here that goes through this level of gray, but if you start getting really deep colors, those do not come through well on the applicant tracking system.
That's very interesting. Good to know. Anybody else have any other questions?
This is Jen Kelly. I have a question. Do you recommend having like a plain old Word resume for them to use for, the applicant tracking system, and then one to present like this?
Yes, that's another very good question. Thank you. So a Word resume is best from a recruiter's perspective. I like having this contact information and LinkedIn profile not in a header. A lot of people will take their contact information and put it in a header. The reason I don't like that is, as a recruiter, I have to then open the header to click on your LinkedIn or to click on your email address to get that connection. So I absolutely advise a Word format. Sometimes the PDFs don't always come across as well as they should. So I always advise a Word format. If you want to have something a little bit cleaner or more locked up, I do think if you're handing your resume to someone, you can get a little bit more fancy there. But again, you want to always think about, where does your eye go? And is your eye going to a qualifier?
Very good point.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you very much, Amy Lynn. We appreciate that.
Sure thing.
Luann, you are up now on deck. So would you like to discuss interview preparation?
Oops.
Luann, are you with us?
I was not. So, but I'm here. Glad to be with everybody here today. I'm a good follow-up to Amy Lynn. She's talking about the resume as being sort of the ticket in, and once you're in, you better be ready for the interview, because that's how you're going to hopefully get the job offer. So I'm going to cover a lot of information here pretty quickly. I'll hit the highlights. I'm sure this presentation will go out to everyone, and you certainly can come back to us with questions either at the end of today or later on. So preparing for the interview, you have a really short period of time to get across a core message. Generally, it's 45 minutes, sometimes an hour. Occasionally, it's a little bit longer. That's the importance of being prepared. Prepare for this just like you would for a sporting event or a musical event or a project or a course you're taking at school. It's no different. Don't wing this. The more you practice, the more you prepare, the more you be ready, the better chance you'll have of actually landing a job offer. You want to conduct research. Today with the internet, there's no excuse to not do good research on each and every company that you interview with. You want to know their products. You want to know their history. You want to know what's going on in the marketplace. What's their competitors doing? What issues are they up against? You want to come across as having really researched the company and have an interest in the company. Based on that research, you're going to tailor your accomplishment stories. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on when we talk about behavioral-based interviews. But Amy Lynn showed a great resume in that gentleman had accomplishment stories as his bullet points, not just a list of job responsibilities and tasks. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Also, lastly on this slide, you want to determine who's conducting the interview. What I would suggest is you have a list of questions that you want to get answers from the interview scheduler. So whoever you're talking to and setting up your interviews, have a list of questions for them so that you have all these answers up front. But one is, who are you going to be talking to? What are their names, their titles, their contact details? If you get that up front, that'll be very helpful further down the line as you prepare and eventually want to send your thank you emails. Okay, next slide. Virtual interviews, not a whole lot different than in person, but there's a few more things you need to prepare virtually. You want to test your technology well in advance. Yes, last minute issues can come up on both sides, but try to work out whatever issues there might be on your side up front. All right, so test your technology. Dress for the role. Doesn't matter if you're going in person or you're virtual, you want to dress appropriately for the role. The last are typical for anything you're preparing for virtual. Minimize your distractions, professional background, good lighting. Practice all of that before you get started. And chances are you've already done that for your Zoom calls or for your other web calls. Okay, next slide. Conducting the interview. If you're going in person, and I know that's not done too much today because of the pandemic, but you want to arrive a little early. You don't want to be winded. You don't want to be flustered. You want to be prepared. You want to be calm. If you're doing a virtual, log in at least 5 minutes early. Make sure you've got all those kinks worked out and you're ready to roll. Make sure you're waiting for them, then vice versa, they're waiting for you. Establish how much time. There's another question to ask that interview scheduler. How much time for the interview? How many people will I be speaking with? Having that information up front helps you better prepare. Looking further down on this slide, try to postpone salary discussions until an offer is made. This isn't so easy nowadays. I know if you're going to apply online, sometimes you're forced into answering those kinds of questions. If you are forced, see if the system will allow you to put in a range or allow you just to avoid the question. It may not happen, but if you can give a range, that's preferable. And make sure the bottom of the range is something you truly will consider. Don't spend all the time going through something and then they come in at the bottom and you're not at all interested. You've wasted your time and you've wasted their time as well. Lastly here, don't dominate the interview. You want to keep it interactive. They have a lot of questions to ask you, so keep your answers concise. Then let them ask if they have more, or you can always ask them, is there something further you need? But allow them to move on, all right? I can't tell you how many times I've done interviews and I've asked one question and the candidate is off and running and I never get a chance, other than a timeout kind of thing. Honestly, it doesn't impress the interviewers. So keep it interactive. Next slide. Concluding the interview. Make sure all your questions are answered. Don't forget, this is a two-sided discussion. You are interviewing them as well. You want to know if this is the place you want to work and the job for you. So make sure you get your questions answered as well. Close by highlighting your interest and value to the position and organization. Even if midstream you decide this is not the job for me, go for it. The better thing is to try to get the job, and you can always politely decline it at the end. But the bottom line is you never know, that company may have another job coming along right behind this one that might be the perfect job for you. So you don't want to preclude that opportunity by blowing this one. So go for it. Ask the interviewer for the next steps in the hiring process. That's always a good last question to ask them. Immediately after the interview, and this is an important one, make notes about the information you've gathered. If you're at a live interview, the minute you get back into your car, write down everything you can remember about the interview. If it's a virtual, the minute you get off, write down everything you can remember. Write about what worked, what didn't. This is a learning opportunity. The other thing is write down everything you can remember about the specific person, because when you write your email thank yous, if you can mention something that was specific to your discussion with the person, that's always a win. Lastly, follow-up letters within 24 hours of the interview. Email is absolutely fine. In fact, it's pretty much the way it's done nowadays, but you want to email each and every person you've spoken with. Try to make sure each one is a little bit different, maybe a little bit customized to what you talked about with that person, because trust me, they often share those emails. They'll just send it on. If they see the same one being used for everyone, just not impressive. Okay. Prepare for tell me about yourself. This is frequently used as an interview opener. We call it an icebreaker. Oftentimes after the first introductions, they'll say, hey, tell me about yourself. Use your elevator speech. And if you don't have one, you should have one. And you'll find lots of good information out on the internet about preparing elevator speeches. And I've included a lot of things that be covered in an elevator speech. But your elevator speech is very useful for answering that tell me about yourself, and it should be practiced. Okay, next slide. Ask the right questions. Keep in mind, this is a two-way process. You're interviewing them as well. Prepare those questions up front and bring them with you. All right. Ask questions about maybe organizational culture, department-specific culture, challenges for the person that might fill the role. But make sure at least one or two of the questions are broader business objectives, and that's when your research comes in very handy. You want to show them that you are a business person, that you're not just a marketing person or a finance person or an HR person. You're a broader business person, and you have interest in that company's broader business objectives. So make sure you've got at least a couple of questions that are more about what's going on with their competitors, or what's new, or, hey, I've heard, Google is going to come in to move in Pittsburgh. Is this going to affect this site, type of thing? And you can always ask last question about the next steps in the interview process. Okay, next question. Talked a little earlier about behavioral-based interviews. A lot of companies use them today. Sometimes one specific interviewer will use them amongst many. If you hear introductory statements like, tell me about a time, provide a recent example, describe an occasion, you'll know you're in a behavioral-based interview. The beauty to these is if you prepare for these, you also prepare for what I call more traditional. And the more traditional interview is really based off your resume. They're asking you about things they see on your resume. If you prepare in this way, you'll be well set for the traditional interview as well. Okay, next slide. So you're going to want to prepare accomplishment stories, and I use an acronym called SOAR. I think it works really well. It's easy to remember, and it gives you a nice outline for preparing. And SOAR stands for situation, obstacles, actions, results. So what was the situation? What was the obstacle that you or the team faced? What were the actions that you took? And lastly, what were the results that you and or the team helped to obtain, and what were their benefits? So if you prepare in this way, trust me, you'll be ready for most questions that you're going to get thrown at you, whether it be behavioral based or what I call the more traditional interview. Okay, next slide. Final word on SOAR. Amy Lynn, again, shared a great resume where that gentleman had accomplishment statements as his bullets rather than just a list of tasks and responsibilities. And I understand early in your career, you may only have tasks and responsibilities to list, but where you can add accomplishment statements, and certainly as you move through your career, you're going to have those. You're going to want to prepare a SOAR story for every accomplishment statement on your resume. So in those cases, on your resume, it should be the second two. Action and results. Here were the actions I and the team took, and here were the results. Here were the benefits. All right. So you're going to have an accomplishment story for every, a SOAR story for every accomplishment statement. Look for job posts on the job posting for keywords. Those are your skills, your competencies, abilities. You're going to see things like they want a team player, they want critical thinking skills, they want good communication skills. Make sure you have a SOAR story for each one of those. Tell them about a time that you worked as a team or the time that you used your communication skills. And once you prepare those SOAR stories, practice delivering them. Get really comfortable at just being able to go through them, situation, the obstacle, the action, and results, and you'll be well prepared. Okay. Next slide. The importance of nonverbal communication, and we all know this is really important. If you're going in person, a firm handshake. Either virtual or in person, smile sincerely, make eye contact. It may not be easy for you, but you want to let the interviewer know you're really glad to be there. Establish rapport with some friendly small talk. Take the cues from the interviewer. Some like to have a small chit chat, others like to jump right in. Wherever they go, that's where you go. Dress appropriately. Good question for that interviewer scheduler. What's the company dress code? If you don't know, always err to the side of being more conservative. You want to show interest, optimism, and enthusiasm throughout the interview. No interviewer wants to see a Debbie Downer. So be upbeat, don't be over the top, but be enthusiastic about your interview. And lastly, and Amy Lynn referred to this, interviewers make immediate judgments. Is it fair? Absolutely. Is it human? Yes, we all do it. So make sure your first impression is that of a professional. Don't let them discount you before you even actually get into the interview. Okay, and my last slide has to do with tips and techniques. Be confident rather than concerned with rejection. I know this is hard, but we as human beings always face rejection. You're not alone. You're probably going to go through a lot of interviews before you land that perfect job. But don't worry about it. If you're prepared, just go for it. All right, just go for it. And whatever happens, happens. Make sure you focus on what you can do for the employer. That is what they're most interested in. Second, never be critical of a past employer or an employee. Now, good interviewers like Amy Lynn, like Diane, like Patrick, like Jennifer, they may lead you that way. They may put a question in that says, oh, you must have had a tough supervisor one time. How did that work out? Don't let them take you down that path. Say, yeah, sure, we all have tough supervisors, but you know what? By doing this or doing that, I was able to really cement a great relationship with that person. So turn it into a positive, all right? Never be critical of a past employer or an employee there. No good interviewer wants to hear that. Admit if you don't know something. No one knows everything. Needless to say, if you say, I don't know to too many questions, you're not going to get the job. But if there's something you truly don't know, just say to them, you know, I've never experienced that. Here's what I think I would do. Do you want to hear that? Or sometimes they'll just move on to the next question. Avoid apologizing things for you that you can't change. You can't change your age, your education, your work history. If you've got in for the interview, someone thinks that you might have the right qualifications. All right. So don't worry about apologizing, but sometimes you can be prepared, right? If you know you don't have a certain experience, prepare to talk about things that can help. Like, hey, I'm a quick learner. I love to try new things, or I've done this that might be relevant to what you're looking for. So be prepared for it. And the last thing, and again, maybe it's because I'm an HR person, never underestimate the influence of either an HR employee, because generally sometimes that's the first person you're going to talk with, or what I call a non-decision maker. Maybe it's the receptionist at the front desk. Don't ever underestimate their influence. For many years, I worked in manufacturing, and the first person that our people would meet was Rita at the front desk. Even after a great interview, the first person I would go to after that person left was Rita and say, what'd you think? Sometimes Rita would say, hey, seemed nice. I didn't really get a chance to talk to her. Sometimes Rita would say, you know what? We had a great conversation. I really like Mary. And sometimes Rita would say, she totally ignored me. She treated me like I didn't exist. And you know what? I had a great leadership team that we would all agree that if that's how Rita got treated, that's how that person would probably treat others. So that person would come off the list as a potential candidate. So again, never underestimate anybody you meet with. They may all have something to say about your potential for landing that job. Treat everyone the way that you would want to be treated. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luann. So Diane, you are up next. So while we do the screen swap here and you pull your slides up, Catherine and I are going to go ahead and unveil a big surprise. So throughout the course of this webinar, we have 3 free student memberships to raffle off. So I am going to pull up a random generator and pull up a number, and then Catherine will let us know who our first prize winner is. Right. Everybody get excited. Woohoo, it's Friday, we're supposed to be happy. So the first number that we have is 25, and you have to be present to obviously to win this student membership. So Catherine, who is 25?
All right, number 25 on my list is Maria Frederick. Let's see. Maria is here.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's do one more and then we'll save the last one for right here at the end. So let me generate one more number. 32.
Okay. Let's see, I have Marie Pampina. Is Marie on the list? All right, I don't think Marie is here.
All right, let's try 11. That's the beauty of these random things. You can do it this fast.
All right, let's see here. Renee Coyne.
No, Renee. I don't see Renee. All right. Well, we'll have to do 2 at the end because I'm ready to learn about some onboarding expectations here. So
Yeah.
Diane, I see you're up and ready. So welcome to the stage, and we'll continue with the prizes at the end.
Sure, absolutely. Can everybody see my screen okay? Hopefully we're good.
Yes, ma'am.
Perfect, wonderful. Well, I am so glad everybody has joined us today. I know we really like to share information with you because you are the future job market. From the HR perspective, you're the ones we're looking for. We want to bring you on board. So we've talked about the resumes. We've talked about that behavioral interviewing. Now I'm going to talk to you about onboarding. You did all that, you've landed your job, you've gotten the offer you've wanted, you're so excited. It's time to come on board to the company now. So you should know that how you are going to be onboarding is very different than your parents or even older siblings may have experienced kind of due to COVID. It's changed things. It changed a lot of things in our world, and HR is no exception. The good news is any company you join, you're going to have HR to help bring you in. And you have people that are going to be excited you're there, wanting you there, and trying to make it easy as possible. So we're going to talk about a few things that you should be prepared for. First, many companies have drug testing. Now, if you're in the Pittsburgh area, you know we have a lot of medical around here, UPMC, Highmark, a lot of doctor's offices, and they may require you to take drug tests. Some companies do this, some do not. It just depends. Once you're hired, it will be part of your onboarding, you'll be told. Make sure that you set this up as you're directed to, and you follow through as HR and your recruiter is helping you with. I know a lot of COVID testing and COVID vaccinations, those clearly are taking priority in the medical community, but these drug tests are still occurring. So make sure you follow the instructions. If it's a time drug test and you only have 48 hours to take it, don't delay. And if you do experience a delay, immediately reach out to your recruiter and talk to them so that they aren't thinking you're avoiding it and they realize you've hit an obstacle of some kind. Similarly, background checks, they can take a while to come back. You have to put information in, it has to be looked at. And while a lot of companies and a lot of governmental arms are still in remote situations, that may take longer than expected. So stay close to your recruiter on this. They'll help you through the process. Now, onboarding, most of us are comfortable in paperwork. You'll have to do an I-9, you'll have to register for benefits, all kinds of documents and things. And we're used to doing things through email. All of us are really comfortable. But once you get past that and you're looking at your first day, it could look very different. Maybe you're picking up your equipment curbside and take it home and you have a day to set up and you have to call IT to do that. Maybe you come in, but now you're sitting socially distant in a cube 6 feet away from other new hires in an orientation class, and it's not as hands-on. Could be you show up and you're shown to your desk, your cube, or maybe even an office, and suddenly you're on Zoom calls all day and you're trying to be oriented and onboarded that way. So your first day, your welcome aboard could look very, very different. Before COVID, we often did coffee and donuts and would call the team together and welcome the new person in so they feel welcomed and start feeling comfortable. Now it may be a pack of hand sanitizer and wipes on a mask on a desk, and that's it, because we can't get close. We don't want to put you at risk. Usually in the past, your company would take you to lunch on the first day, get to know you a little bit better. Maybe you'd be assigned an onboarding buddy. That probably won't happen now. Your friendly faces are going to be covered in masks. So, you need to figure out how you can demonstrate your value and start to build connections, even with these obstacles in place. Hopefully they won't be with us forever, but they're here right now. So you should prepare for them, knowing it's going to look different. Now, most of you are in college, you're going to be, graduates coming up soon. You've had to adjust, you've had to change, you've had to leverage technology in ways that some of us have never had to do that. So that's actually a benefit on your side. It's something you're bringing to the table, and you're probably more ready for this than maybe someone, for me, from an older generation is. But don't be alarmed when these things look different than maybe you thought you'd be experiencing. Training is another thing that's going to look different. prior to COVID, you maybe would be in a training class and go through training modules and all of those things. Now it's likely to be socially distant and more virtual. You're going to have to think about how you can begin to develop those relationships with your manager. Maybe you even have subordinates, who knows, through socially distant ways of doing that. Maybe you're going to have to connect more on social media. Maybe you set up, virtual happy hours or something with a team to get to know people, but make the time to do that. Make the time to reach out to your team and develop those relationships, because they matter. It's a lot easier to turn to your onboarding buddy or someone else in your department and say, hey, how do I find this? I'm not even sure where it's located. What do I do? Get them to give you information so that you can begin to assimilate to the culture of your company quicker. I will say there is a fine line between waiting for people to respond to your emails, to questions that you have, and showing a lack of initiative. So try to talk to your manager about what the expectations are, how long they think it's going to take you to really get up and running and understand the nuances of a program or a project, or even just the company in general. Make sure you know those expectations so you can work to meet them. The first 90 days of your employment is kind of that introductory period. You're still getting used to things in the company's getting used to being on board. Those are critical days. So use them to your advantage. So I want to talk, one more slide back, there we go. I wanted to talk about some COVID complications. So as the pandemic drags on, we are seeing a lot of companies, a lot of different approaches through companies based on what state guidance is, CDC guidance, local regulations. A lot of things are in the news, a lot of things happen, and it shifts. Boy, does it shift. I'm on the reentry team for my company, and I feel like every day I'm getting new guidance on something, and we have to shift and make new plans. So potentially during that interview process, one of the questions you want to ask, or when you get the offer and you want to talk to your recruiter, know if your position is in office. Is it a hybrid or hoteling position? Is it a remote position? Each of these positions and how you're going to be working could present challenges and opportunities. So find out upfront which one you may be. And if you're not familiar with hybrid or hoteling, hybrid may be, maybe you have a schedule where you are Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the office, Tuesday, Thursday at home, or something like that. Maybe it's a hoteling position where you're mostly at home, and then there's a day here and there every month that is scheduled for you to come in. So know what your role is going to be. If you are in office or hybrid or hoteling, so you're coming in where people are, understand what your company is saying about vaccines. Are they mandatory? Aren't they mandatory? Are they offering PTO days for you to get vaccinated? I know Joe Biden just handed down guidance for companies that are 50 or less employees just this week, that they have to give PTO time. They want people to get PTO time to get their vaccination. So understand if that's going to be in the mix for you. Ask about safety protocols, protective measures. Know what that is up front. And if your company is not providing cleaning supplies and things to keep your area clean, you may want to proactively go in with that on your first day so you can make sure that your area is safe. Seek clarification. If you are hotel or hybrid, do you have to book workspace before you can go in? A lot of companies have that. You might show up and your space has been taken by someone else. So know these things. And remember, in that introductory period, your recruiter is still a resource. You can go back to them if you're uncertain and you don't maybe want to approach your supervisor, you haven't built, a good foundational relationship. Go back to your recruiter and say, I have a question. Can you help me? HR, we tend to be very friendly. We want you to feel comfortable. We're happy to take those questions. So come on back to us. We'll answer them. We want to work with you. If your job is remote, here you are, you've been thinking you're going to be hired into this company, you're going to go in and set up your workspace and get settled. Maybe you get hired into a remote position. You might be asked to show proof of high-speed internet, a workspace, maybe even renter's insurance to cover equipment that would be given to you to take home. You might be asked to sign a remote policy, where there are clarifications on what you can do, can't do, those kinds of things. Make sure you know about that. Be aware if your company has a disclaimer about their systems and their policies on using their systems. Many companies can see just about everything you do on your laptop and in the systems. There's even technology you should know that can tell a supervisor or manager how long it takes you to type the word "the." It can be very drilled down. It can see if people are, shoe shopping, or there's a surprise Kate Spade sale or something. They can see that if you are deviating from your work. Now, if it happens occasionally, probably not going to be an issue. But if you are planning, your entire vacation or trip to Aruba or something and taking hours and hours, you may have someone coming to you so to talk about it. So make sure you know what the policy is on usage of your equipment. There may be a policy on using cameras. Some companies say you must have your camera on. Some may say it's up to you if you're comfortable or not. You should know that. Also, if you are asked to download any apps from your company on your phone, find out what the policy is on that. If you are, PHI that might be coming to you, if you maybe are hired into a position that has a medical end or an HR, know what the company's policies are on that. And lastly, I want to say the PHRA is a great resource for you, especially if you're in and around HR, but also, if you're just interested in how things go and getting into companies and being a young professional, I highly recommend becoming a member of PHRA. And I know, Liz, we're offering, I think, 3 free memberships to you. Get that membership and use it as a good resource to help you land that job that you're looking for your future. So that's everything that you might expect when you could be onboarded into a new position.
So
Thank
sorry
you,
about
Diane.
that. I just realized I was muted. So thank you, Jen, for stepping in. And thank you so much, Diane. I did. And just as you had mentioned, regarding the memberships, I'm just looking for the name. Maria or Marie Pampina, you just joined a couple of seconds late there, or you may have been in and out, but you were one of the prize winners, which is a free student membership to the PHRA. So I do see that you're here now. So Catherine and I will get that over to you. We'll send some information in and walk you through all of those steps. So welcome to the PHRA. All right, so up next now, we are a little over on time, but we still have some really great information to go over. So for those of you that are able to stick with us, please do. Patrick is going to bring us home with the top hiring industries in the Pittsburgh region. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you so much, Liz. So I want to say a quick thank you to all the panelists and a quick thank you to everyone who joined us today. Hopefully you're finding this information useful. Remember, you're going to get the slides. We will open it up for questions here in a few moments for those that can stay a little while longer, but use the chat to ask any questions if they pop up. So, 2020 was a crazy challenging year. And guess what? 2021 is kicking off the same way. So I'm going to be covering positions that are in high demand right now here in Pittsburgh. We've followed closely throughout the entire pandemic what companies have been essential, and even the non-essential companies that have continued to do business and continue to hire. So go ahead to the next slide, Liz. Again, as we mentioned, I think this COVID-19 pandemic has gone on for longer than certainly anyone hoped, and probably that anyone ever imagined. And there's still a ton of uncertainty out there. But the good news is there are businesses hiring. If you remember from Liz's intro of me, I've been in the staffing industry since 2004, and I have never ever seen it busier than it is right now. We're getting on average of between 5 and 8 new job orders. That's a client, a company coming to me asking for our recruitment services, 5 to 8 a day. Not even counting the 20-person project I got yesterday and the 50-person project we've been working on last week. So a couple things. You're gonna, so the work is out there. But the pandemic has led to a rapid rise in remote work. So we've covered that in a bunch of different sections. So if you haven't really considered that, or maybe if you weren't open to it, you may want to consider reconsidering. You also be ready to compete hard for these jobs because they're out there. And I know that, it's a highly, highly competitive market. So, with that, Liz, let's go to the next slide. Let's get into the lists because I'm sure that's kind of what everyone is looking for. So I would go ahead and scratch down notes on the red ones for right now. Those are what I'm going to talk about today. But again, you're going to get the copy of the slides, so you'll have everything. Nonprofit is the hottest sector of business that we are seeing right now, hands down. I would venture a guess to say it's heavier than even the healthcare, which I know might seem pretty unique, but all of the money from the CARES Act, and that's the 2.2 trillion that President Trump signed into effect very early in the pandemic, and then the 1.9 that President Biden signed in not long after his inauguration. All of that money is being tracked, and you know who's being tasked to track it, administer it, and then follow up? It's all the nonprofits, and nonprofits run lean, and they need help right now. So that might be a good keyword for you to use when you're sitting down in front, because it can be in any different area: accounting, the rent relief, administrative, data entry, customer service. You can all see them on the slides, but that's what we're following the money, and we're seeing a lot of work in those areas. So the next slide, let's talk a little bit about finance, banking, and mortgage. Loan closing and processing. I have 5 companies in the Pittsburgh area that cannot get enough people, and they're all doing work around the mortgage, refinancing, mortgage appraisal business. They're all out there. So like I said, I have open requisitions for all of them. It may not have been something that was really on your radar when you entered college and thought about your dream job and where you would be as you approached your graduation, but it's great analytical work. And right now there's plenty of overtime to be had. So great opportunities to earn money and add some relevant experience to your resume. Next, I already mentioned it, the healthcare and pharmacy. Right now, the hottest sector of that has been vaccine support, administration, and now we're already getting past those areas to the compliance side of things. There's still billing that needs to be done after the fact by all of these organizations that are doing the great work of getting vaccines administered. Early on this year, it was mostly around call center and getting people set up for appointments to get vaccinated. But as you can see, I'd say the country and definitely our state and the Pittsburgh area has made great strides in that. So now we're already seeing that on the backside with compliance and follow-up work. The last area I'm going to go through today is the government sector. So I'll just tell you a quick story. We are supporting the state of Michigan in their unemployment department. We have 1,300 call center employees taking phone calls from unemployed Michiganders. I don't know what the heck they call them, but people that live in Michigan, and you may have heard there was a big struggle in Pennsylvania, as well as many, many states. So I called Harrisburg for weeks and weeks and weeks to see if we could secure that business. Wasn't successful, but as the Michigan project grew, they didn't just take Michigan residents, they opened it up and we ended up getting a little piece. So I'd say at one point we had 55 Pennsylvanians that we were able to put out to work, taking calls from individuals that really, really need help. And that continues. We just put out 400 new ones this year. Not sure where that's going to continue, but again, that might not. have been something you ever thought about, from a call center position, but it could be a great foot in the door if you're a people person and looking for work. So I'm going to speak now to anyone on the call that has a technology background or pursued a technology degree. It's not necessarily my area of focus and what I do every single day, but my company, Robert Half, has a full division dedicated solely to technical placements. So here are the skills in demand on slide 7. So just kind of, again, from a keyword perspective, if that's your area, these are what, as we poll CIOs and CTOs across the country and across the globe, we collect that information, and these were the results. Now, slide 8, the next slide is what I call the alphabet soup slide. So if you are thinking from a continuing education perspective after you complete your bachelor's degree, looking into IT certifications, here is a nice list of some of the areas you may want to explore depending on your area of expertise and, of course, the area that you're interested in pursuing. So just to wrap it up, I strongly recommend checking out roberthalf.com for more information, because what I shared today is really just the tip of the iceberg. You may, if you haven't before, want to consider temporary or contract work. It's a way for you to capitalize on my team's relationships and our reputation in the marketplace to get your foot in the door. And I said it before, but I think it bears repeating. It's going to help you get some money in your pocket and some valuable, relevant work experience on your resume. So with that, I'll wrap it up. Liz, turn it back to you. We'll see if we have any questions.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, this is your opportunity to ask the experts. So if anybody has any questions that they'd like to bring to the table, please either you can use the chat, or if it's easier for you to just unmute, go right ahead. I know there was a lot of information covered too, and like I said, it is recorded, and we will get this out to everybody. All right, seems like it's a quiet group here today. So I just want to recap with our prizes here that we have. So Maria Frederick and Marie Pampina are our 2 student members so far that have won a student membership. So Catherine, I'm going to pull one more number here and see if we can get one more student in here. And the number is 24.
I have Teresa Denton. I think I saw that name.
Yep, I see it. She's on my screen.
Excellent.
All right. So Mariah, Marie, and Teresa, we will be in touch with you to get you set up and into the PHRA membership so you can take advantage of all of these great opportunities.
I think we have a question in the chat box.
Oh, we do, from Teresa. Can anyone share advice on getting into the nonprofit employment area if you do not have experience there?
Yep. So I'll take that one if that's okay. There's a job board called Not-for-Profit Talent in Pittsburgh. That is a really good one for nonprofit jobs. One thing I would advise if you're interested in building a career in nonprofit would be to volunteer. So as you volunteer and you get known within those organizations, those are great ways to start building relationships that could lead to a job down the road. So even if you get a job like Patrick was mentioning right now that might be outside of your discipline, while you're doing that job, take some time to volunteer and give back to those nonprofit organizations that you're passionate about. And in the meantime, keep your eye on the nonprofittalent.com website.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I appreciate everybody that was able to stay on a little longer with us today. I think we covered a lot of great information, and I hope that everybody found this very useful and helpful within their next steps in their career path here. Really appreciate everybody's participation. And just remember, for the students, the future of your profession is bright. And just by showing up here today and participating in the program, you have shown that you have the drive necessary to thrive in your early career. And just stay positive, and good luck to all of you out there. Hope to see you on at one of our PHRA events or on a webinar, but just stay positive and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day. Happy Friday.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy Friday. Thank you, everyone.